Hello, everyone. This is Waqas Malik, a forgiveness coach, and today I have a privilege to engage with Mr. Carl Grant III, a seasoned leader boasting 25 years of expertise in business development. Thanks, Carl, for joining me today.
Waqas, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So my first question is to you that can you share a personal story from your life that inspired or influenced the ideas presented in How to Live the Abundant Life?
Sure. Yeah, so when I started out to write this book, I wanted to write a book on business because I've been very successful in professional services business development. And so I sat down to write about how I grew revenue from $310 million annual revenue to over 2 billion in my last company. And I realized that that's a small audience. And the things that I did to be successful in my job also worked at home and in the community. And so I've had some major life changes. I was, and I'm really intrigued to talk to you about the whole idea of forgiveness. But I grew up in America. A lot of people grow up without any faith at all, right? No faith in God. People in America are free thinkers. We can think whatever we want. And I know that there's more traditions in countries like your own, where people grow up in a more of a faith tradition. Well, I didn't. And so at the age of 24, I became a believer in God, and it changed my life. And so that really is what set me on the path to abundance. And we'll talk about that more as we go on in the interview.
Right. So, can you share the inspiration behind your book, How to Live the Abundant Life, and what motivated you to explore the concept of forgiveness in your writing?
Yeah, so what motivated me to write this is now that I'm a middle-aged guy, I've maybe a little bit more than middle age. My kids are grown. I have five children, ages 20 to 28. I've got a beautiful wife I've been married to for 29 years. I've lived a very good life, an abundant life, and I learned a lot of things over my journey. I'm in my 50s now, right? And so if I knew what I knew today when I was in my 20s, I would have lived differently in my 20s, right? I had to learn a whole life of lessons to be able to live the way I live today. And so I wanted to impart some of that wisdom that I've gained through living an abundant life to people who could read it and learn about these things that I learned over the course of my life and put them into place earlier in life. I think there was one other element to that question that you asked. I forget what it was. Oh, um, yeah, addressing forgiveness. So I'm Waqas, I'm curious. You come from a Muslim background, right?
Yeah.
And what is the concept of forgiveness? I've read the Quran, but I'm not a theologian, so I don't know what is the concept of forgiveness in the Muslim tradition.
In Islam, forgiveness has a broader aspect, and we Muslim believe that if someone hurt you deeply, we believe in God, and we believe that our God will forgive us. So you should forgive his creation as well. We are humans and we do mistakes. So in Islam, if someone hurts you and you do the same thing, the good thing is that you forgive.
And that makes sense. I mean, it's very similar in the Christian tradition. And so, after living a sinful life for 24 years, I'm not proud of that, but what it is, right? I had a lot to be forgiven for because I'd done a bunch of stuff that I shouldn't have done, and I didn't know any better. And so when you come to faith as a Christian, the way it works is we believe that Jesus, you believe in Jesus too, but we believe that he died. He died on a cross, and he was buried, and he rose again 3 days later. And that sacrifice he made for us was for the forgiveness of our sins. It's not too dissimilar to you have sacrifices for Eids and things like that, right? But we believe that he was our sacrifice. And so because he forgave me for so much that I didn't deserve. I didn't deserve it. It was a free gift, right? Because he did that for me, I need to do it for others, right? So the Bible teaches us to forgive others. It says, how many times should I forgive my brother? Jesus said, forgive him 70 times seven, right? And he said, should I forgive him 7 times? He goes, no, 70 times seven. I mean, basically that was a way of him saying you need to forgive him an infinite amount of times, right? And so it's not too dissimilar, but there's a motivation for that forgiveness that we have as in the Christian tradition.
Yeah. So, what motivated you to write a book on living up an abundant life, and how do you define abundance in this context?
Yes, so a lot of people will think of abundance as material possessions. And I actually had somebody say on social media, just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean that you're living abundantly. And I had to go on and say, with all due respect, the book is not about that. It's about the abundance I talk about is the abundance in relationships and in the daily interactions of life. And so my motivation goes back to my transition to faith, right? And then in that faith tradition, I rather than doing things for myself my entire life, I did the opposite of what comes natural to human nature, right? In human nature, you want everything for yourself, and so you take it for yourself. But in the faith tradition, Jesus taught us if you want to be first, you must be last and servants of all, right? That's a whole different way of approaching life. And so because I didn't do the things that come naturally to the human nature throughout my life, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? Because I've practiced that throughout my life. So much good has come back to me. So much. You do something, it is almost insignificant. You do some little thing for somebody as a favor, and that person may not pay you back, but it comes back to you in the universe. It's a spiritual law that works, it comes back tenfold. And so because I have practiced my life doing things for others without any expectation of return, what has happened is I have been so blessed with loving relationships in my life, wonderful family members, great friends, great members of the community. People I work with are wonderful. It's because I treat them the way I want to be treated, and they treat me better. And that's what motivated me. I wanted to impart that wisdom to people who might not understand those concepts.
Right. So, could you elaborate on the role of forgiveness in achieving and sustaining an abundant life?
Yeah, let's take it down to a relationship, okay? So my wife and me, that's my most important human relationship, right? Because we believe that you become one flesh in my faith tradition when you get married. And so when I was going through, when we get married in some churches, we have counseling. The pastor who marries us, it would be an imam in your case, would counsel us so that we have a successful marriage. What he told me was, if you get in an argument, and you will get in arguments, everybody gets in arguments, you need to go to your wife and you need to apologize for what you did. Even if you were 2% wrong and she was 98% wrong, you apologize for your 2% and you ask her to forgive you and don't expect anything in return, right? You just leave it at that. You're responsible for your 2%. Your 2% might be that you spoke unkindly, right? Maybe she did something horrible to you and you said something mean, and you say, I'm sorry, I should not have spoken to you that way. I'm sorry, will you forgive me? You've done what you need to do. What happens virtually 100% of the time is give it a little bit of time. She goes, it's like a flower that, a flower closes up, the flower opens up and blossoms again. And she comes back and she goes, you know what? I shouldn't have done what I did to you. I'm sorry. Will you please forgive me? And then you have restoration, right? That's the way it works when you have two people that are reading from the same book and practicing in the same way. And it's beautiful.
Right. So, in your book, do you provide practical steps or advice on practicing forgiveness? If so, could you give us a glimpse of some key insights?
Yeah, absolutely. I take the readers through a story and I'm not going to say who this was because I don't want to cause any problems, but there was a family member who didn't agree when I became a believer. There's certain things that we believe about how you should raise your children. And I was the way you discipline your children. And I was practicing the way we believe the Bible teaches us to discipline our children. Well, these people didn't agree with what I was doing, and they called the authorities in the United States as Child Protective Services and said that I was abusing my children. I wasn't abusing them. I love my children, you know, and because of that, it's very dangerous when somebody does that because they can actually take your children away from you. And so that caused me to separate from these family members and not talk to them for about 8 years. And it was hard because these are people that I love. And you know, it's hard, but I had to find it within my heart to forgive them when they came and they wanted to reconcile. And I did. It wasn't easy. It doesn't mean that you need to trust the other person, right? You know, forgiveness, when you talk about forgiveness, it doesn't mean that you forget completely or you restore 100% trust, but you can forgive them in your heart. And the other thing that I'd like to point out about unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping it hurts the other person, right? It doesn't work that way. You drink poison, I'm not hurting Waqas, I'm hurting myself. You don't even know that I drank the poison. You don't care. You're going about your life. And in the meantime, the poison's hurting me, right? That's what unforgiveness is like. And so I go through a number of examples, that probably being the most serious of the examples. But then I have also a little, you know, at the end of every chapter, I have a little workbook type of thing where you go through and you read the summary, and then there's things that you can do to practice the principles that I've taught.
Right. So, how do you believe forgiveness contributes to personal growth and well-being based on your research and experiences?
So my book was not, this was not a research heavy book. This was a I've lived this book, right? And so in my experience, it contributes to personal growth is that you walk around unburdened. You know, if you look at somebody who carries and harbors unforgiveness in their heart, it's like they're pulling boulders along with them, right? That they're tied down. It's a weight that's holding them back and bearing them down. Whereas if you keep short accounts, I mean short accounts, that means if I get in an argument with my wife, I'm not bringing up stuff that she said 20 years ago. I forgot about that. I've already forgiven her for whatever that was, right? You keep short accounts. And if you keep short accounts with people and you hold people in forgiveness, right? Not unforgiveness, then you're not burdened and tied down and held back by all those things. All unforgiveness does is torment you. And I don't want people to walk around with a tormented, hindered life.
Right. A sincere thank you to Mr. Garbrandt III for imparting his wealth of insights today. I hope our audience has gained valuable lessons on abundance. Thank you so much.
Yep. And if you want to read the book, it's available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. And there is a Kindle version available right now for 99 cents. So you can download the app and read it for very cheap.
Thank you so much, Carl. Have a nice day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, Waqas. Thank you. Bye-bye.